It
There we
is,
go.
oh,
All right.
let's record. Oh, we're recording.
Yep.
Oh, thanks, Bart.
Yes.
Started it.
All right.
It is
so
8:11.
8:11. First item consideration is the June 5th, 2020 meeting minutes. Any discussion or items on those?
No.
If not, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and it's passed. Then we have the special joint CDA Village Board meeting minutes. Any comments on those? Well written, nicely done. A lot to write.
I'll make a
Is that
motion
a
to
motion?
approve.
Have a second?
I'll
All right,
second.
did I hear a second? Okay,
Second.
thank
yeah.
you. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
No opposed, okay. Thank you, everybody. Next item, item 4, review of the Q2 2020 fiscal report. That starts on page 11 of the packet. Is Mark there or?
Mark is not on the call this morning,
Okay,
so he just
Uh,
wanted to provide this for information.
yep, again, this is the same report we've seen a number of times. Numbers are basically consistent within the past. I didn't know sometimes people have questions on specific line items or anything. I just wanted to see if anybody had any questions on those.
So we're putting out 39,271 in facade grants this year. That just seems like a big number, but I could go back. I'm sure. Is there a listing of them somewhere?
On the page 2
I see.
of the fiscal report, they kind of list out each facade grant that came through, and it starts with the Alliance Française in 2019, and then it runs through the amount dispersed by category. So there's Alliance Française, Bonobo.
Yeah, I see.
Okay. So it kind of gives a breakdown of the last ones that have been entered into.
So this Elon Peltz is the former Hayek's pharmacy.
Yeah.
Why did he
Yes.
get 2?
There were 2 commercial storefronts there. So the program is written per tenant space. So when he split it up from 1 storefront to 2 storefronts, it technically qualified for 2 within the program. So he put 2 new storefront window units in, and that's primarily what that covered.
So there are actually 2 spaces there.
Correct. One is
Yep,
occupied by
yes.
the Skin Bar now, and the other one is still vacant.
Okay. Okay.
Are those apartments above all done now? I think they are, right?
Yep.
I
Yep,
think
there's
they
3
look
apartments.
like they are. And he put the sign back, which looks really cool up high on the building.
Hey, what's going on in Kensington Liquor Space?
Hey, no jumping around here. Come on. Stay focused here.
Do we know, yes or
Good
no?
Lord.
You need to tell me. Is it known or no?
We don't know what tenant is moving in there. We know he's going to design review board next Thursday for some additional improvements to the rear parking lot, but no tenant has been named.
Got it.
I heard it was a general store.
That'd be fun.
That could be accurate.
Okay.
And that's like a dollar store, except more
Okay,
general with
people.
stuff that's over $1. I'm serious. Is that like a franchise, right?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, let's move on to item 5. This is the main thrust of one of the main items for discussion today, the possible extension of TID 1 for affordable housing. So Rebecca, Bart, were you going to lead us? I mean, there's we have the report starting on page 13. Thank you for that. were you going to help facilitate this discussion?
Sure, we'd be happy to. So we left off the strategic planning process with the village board with the #1 priority to evaluate whether or not to extend TID 1 for purposes of affordable housing. So we've been taking a look at a number of the cities in Wisconsin who have exercised this extension. We have not found any similar to our size who have. So I think one of the decisions, should you decide to move forward and extend it for affordable housing, is really contemplating how we're going to use the funds. Most of the cities already have divisions and staff that manage loans and home programs. So in communicating with those cities and reviewing their programs, I'm also cognizant of the fact that we've frozen the business loan program because of the fact that it's administratively burdensome. We don't have staff whose primary duties are doing those loan programs. On the flip side, there are other opportunities that the village could explore, such as doing a more concerted call to developers through a grant program, which would narrow the pool of who would be submitting applications to you and then reviewing based upon different criteria. But those are just a few. We're continuing to explore to see if there are other opportunities or avenues and how the funds can be utilized. One of the ones out there is just to create additional units of affordable housing and focusing on the unit creation in general. But as we kind of lean into this discussion, we're continuing to have those. I have 2 more calls this afternoon, just reviewing different information and programs that people have engaged with. But then again, all of them are with municipalities of a much greater population that are just larger, that have different divisions that are set up to handle some type of administration like this. But we're going to continue to kind of evaluate what can be there. So for purposes of discussion today, we want to kind of start out with the essential premise of what are the CDA's thoughts on the extension of TID 1 for affordable housing? Because that's the first question. And then the second question, reflecting on the housing study that we recently had completed with Novogradac, they had some recommendations or options for consideration. And we as a group really haven't had an opportunity to reflect on what those have been to see what direction our municipality may desire to take. So wanted to lean into that discussion with those 2 policy-based questions to get the CDA's thoughts. And the reason I want to get your thoughts is because as I'm engaging in these conversations and learning and trying to explore different opportunities that may work for us, should you choose to extend TID 1 for affordable housing, it will allow me to narrow my focus and be more concerted in my effort to try to provide you with some options. So with that, I guess I would suggest that we start out with some general conversation with the CDA on what the group's thoughts are on extension of TID 1 for 1 year for purposes of affordable housing.
Would that allow?
Can I just add one before we get to that? Can I just ask, is everybody feel like they have sufficient understanding of TID extension? What it looks like, how it works, are there any questions around that so people are firm in their understanding of this approach?
Well, one question I have is, well, first of all, we don't have to do the entire increment, correct? We could just do like $1 million of it.
Correct.
Okay, and the other question is, are there restrictions within the TIF legislation on what we can use the money for, or is it really pretty discretionary as to how we use it?
75% of the increment needs to be directed specifically for affordable housing that costs no more than 30% of a household's gross monthly income. And the remaining 25% can be used to improve the village's housing stock.
So
I do have a
question. Is that
Go
new
ahead.
construction?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
I said, is that new construction that we're talking about? Or could it be retrofitting existing, or does it have
Yes,
restrictions on that?
no. New construction, retrofitting programs, it's really very broad. Particularly with the 75%, it just must be specifically for affordable housing that costs no more than 30% of a household's gross monthly income.
But is that the Shorewood, I mean, a household, I mean, is that by Shorewood's income or the county's income? I mean, how do you determine what is 30%?
Well, that's when the applicant would need to go through that screening process. It's based on the state's definition of 30%, so we would look at the state's definition of and how they define the parameters for the 30%.
I thought it was by county, because it's definitely not statewide, because that wouldn't make any sense. But
The statute's the one that specifies the 30%.
right, but I think what David is getting at is what geographic area are we talking about? Because 30%, the average income in Milwaukee County is different than Polk County. So,
Well, I mean, yeah, that's something we'd have to figure, I think we have to, because, right, I mean, Shorewood average income is 72,000 in Milwaukee. It's, I don't know, it's on one of these charts, but it's a lot less. So anyway, that's just something we need to figure out.
I'd be happy to follow up with you on that.
I do have a procedural question, or sort of on that. Is that 2.5? What happens if we elect not to do it? Where does that 2.5 million go into the general fund, or is that not collected then? Where does that money go or come from?
We would then pass a resolution to close the TID.
And then it would
And
go
so-
to basically the taxing authorities that are part of the TID.
Okay.
Each get their,
Well, it would fall to
whatever's left
it
over.
would increase the general assessed value. So, you know, what's our assessed value? 1.7 or 8 billion or something. So we'd add 2.5 million to that. So presumably taxes would go down a little bit because we have a higher value.
So there's no
Okay.
actual money moving. It's the valuation.
I mean, if there's money left in the pot at the end of the year, then, so let's say there's
Right.
$1 million left, then that gets split up between taxing agencies. So we would get, you know, 250,000 in cash, you know, to do whatever. But that depends where, you know, that depends how much is in the pot left over before the fiscal year ends, which I think, didn't Mark say that in the last meeting? Didn't he talk about that? But once that year ends, the value in the increased value that has been taxed separately to the TID just falls to the general assessed value for the rest of the village.
Correct.
Right.
So historically,
Yeah.
the village, what's the village's history with affordable housing? Is it the Light Horse?
The Lighthouse is the only development I'm familiar with. Bart, I don't know if you know of any others.
We have that Section 8 housing down
See,
there.
Yeah,
River
Oh.
Park.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what our involvement was with the development of that, but it is affordable housing.
Mhm.
yeah, that whole thing down by Spectre Field.
Right, right. And that's probably been there for 20, 30 years.
At least.
So since then, the experience has been the Light Horse. And I've been in the village a long time, but I have not had experience with that as a development. Would we say it was a success in terms of affordable housing? Is it something we'd want to try again? Because obviously that's something we did with the staff we had available at the time. I'm just saying, if our options are limited by the staffing we have, I guess I'm more comfortable with the staff coming to me and saying, here's what we can do with the manpower we have, than me saying, well, I guess I would be in favor of using some money for affordable housing if we could do it with our staff, but clearly we're not going to add staff to, at least right now, to make a program work.
I'm in agreement. It seems like a lot of money and not a lot of staff.
mean, why can't we contract with somebody to do? I think we can easily contract. Bart, what was the name? There's a Milwaukee organization for low-income housing. Is it MMIC?
Milwaukee Metropolitan Fair Housing.
Yeah.
Something of that sort. Yeah, I'm not sure if they do financing, but they would have resources in terms of how they would do it. And then just from my understanding, so the Light Horse, our involvement with that was just a TIF assistance. We didn't have any specific affordable housing. They utilized state available financing, I believe, for that portion of it. So I don't know that we necessarily contributed specific funds towards affordable housing there, but we did get it within the development deal. If we were to allocate this money towards affordable housing, we could potentially grant that to a developer instead of creating a TIF. So in that case, we had to create a TIF to provide the gap financing. In this case, for example, if we had $500,000 for affordable housing and a developer came along, we could grant that to them without having to create a TIF. So it would be a more quick injection into that. So just for reference, that's my understanding of how the Light Horse happened. Was just it was a regular TIF development that happened to utilize financing that allowed affordable housing.
And so administration of the limit, your accessibility to the lower prices, the developer deals with that, the administrative aspect. They check people's W-2s and, okay.
I mean, we could pass inclusionary zoning and say any new residential development of more than, 10 units needs to have 20% affordable units. And we can contribute, like Bart said, we could just grant them money from the TIF fund as long as we have it. We'd have to figure out what the economic value is, what the difference in cost that the developer's not recouping in rent from a lower income unit versus a market rate unit, and amortize that and subsidize that. But so there would, but we could, that's not that complicated. We could have, who's our new Ellers? Baker Tilly? We have, so we could do something like that. We just have Baker Tilly figure out what the correct subsidy would be and do an inclusionary zoning.
Is that something that would be fluid based upon economic conditions? Is then that?
Yeah, they would figure out like, okay, so if the rent is, it would normally be 3,000, but the lower income units is going to be 2,000. So the developer looks at that and says, I'm making X amount on each $3,000 unit, so I'm losing out on the lower income ones. And you just look at the revenue streams and you could figure out what the subsidy would have to be to make up for the lower income units.
And then each developer decides if it's in his or her best interest, if the margin is big enough to go forward.
I mean, it would be the same kind of negotiation that we'd have to do with the TIF subsidy.
So,
where you sort of figure out what the economic benefit is and the public benefit is, and that's the amount that you're willing to give them.
could I ask a question that I'm not sure has been discussed yet or not, but so we're talking about extending for a year, and does that mean something has to be decided or awarded within 12 months? Because I don't believe we have a lot of demand from a developer standpoint, or even locations that could be used for this. And I could see whatever even was brought to the table by a developer being pulled apart a million different ways by.
Yeah, that's not a requirement to use it within the year. I don't believe so.
No,
Rebecca, am I wrong? Yeah.
No,
We
it
just have
needs
to put it
to
in
stay in a
place.
segregated account and used for those purposes. So we'll account for it every year, and it just stays in a segregated fund.
And can I ask the group just maybe a more basic question to start? Just conceptually, is there agreement on the CDA's part that this is something we want to pursue, using this money for affordable housing? To me, I think we all need to be on the same page on that question. And I know there are some details around that we may differ on or need to discuss, but I want to start just conceptually. Is this something that we want to do to have this money available in order to do some form of affordable housing in the future.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about is I know in that report that we got that, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the findings was that we actually have a lot of quote unquote affordable housing in the village. It's just being occupied by people
Correct.
who
Yes.
can actually
Yes.
afford more. So to extrapolate that, in my mind, it's almost like if we built market rate housing that more people could move out of the affordable housing into and free up the existing affordable housing, we kind of get both with just letting market forces do its thing. But I also,
Although I think that gets back to Trustee Amenta's. I think you're right, but it's not a closed loop. If we add more stock, I think we'll have more people coming in. The demand is there. We'll just keep going up. So the challenge is defining it as affordable housing.
right.
Because the challenge is most of our affordable housing stock is not, it's not defined as affordable housing stock. It's just affordable housing stock because of the price of it, where it sits, but there's no requirements around it, being occupied by people that require affordable housing.
Right. Yeah, I just, in my mind, on paper, in theory, it's a great thing. Logistically and realistically, I have my doubts on whether or not that's going to actually get built.
I would sort of
Because
agree
of
with that.
community issues or what? Because of developers not wanting to do it, or because
Issues,
we'd have community?
NIMBY issues, location, appropriate location issues, basically all the main 3 or 4 kind of buckets that go into getting something like this done, I think are pretty challenging. But not to say it's not worth trying. It's just, I don't know.
So let's focus on that. So can I just reverse?
Can I say something? Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
It's Joe Azage. Yeah, I tend to agree with John in that, and I will say I do think this is a very worthwhile goal. I would like to pursue it. My concern is that sophisticated developers come in, and it's a gimme for them. If we don't have it's a lot of money. We don't have sophisticated enough people or system in place to oversee this, and it's just going to be a giveaway, and it won't achieve the goal that we want. They'll stick a few affordable units, double dip, and get state credits too, and end up coming out ahead because they won't have that same goal in mind, and they'll figure out how to game the system to get the money from us and not give us what we want. If there's a way to get what we want, I'm in favor of it, but I just see this as fraught with peril, that it'll just get kind of taken by the developers.
And can I get from anybody else? Is any, again, I'm just trying to get a baseline here from the group.
I mean,
is anybody against doing, the concept of using this, of delaying for a year and using this money for affordable housing? Forgetting I agree with Joe and others. There are challenges if we did it, but I just want to make sure we are all either on the same page or not with respect to just the concept of doing it. So is anybody against it conceptually?
This is John. I would say I'm for it as long as it doesn't create an undue burden on our staff to try to take this on.
You know what? I mean, this staff issue this is not the first time I've heard the staff. It's come up in regards to the parking too. And I've thought about it a lot. And I'm like, we have to think about, we're here for the village, and especially me and Kathy are here to do what's right for the village. And to say, staff, we can hire staff, we can contract staff. I mean, that's like the tail wagging the dog. That to me is not a valid reason for saying, yes, go in this policy direction, or no, don't go in this policy direction. I mean, we'll figure out how to get that done. That's what it is. So, I mean, I don't buy that as an argument for making a policy decision.
So would you take the staff, would you cut the staff costs out of the 2.5?
Well, if we contract, yeah, I mean, we pay staff costs for CDA, we pay out of the TIF money.
I have the same concerns that John and Joe have. I have a hard time understanding how a village this size deals with the development like that, where we make sure, you know, part of affordability, I know it's not a lot, but part of affordability is taxes. And, you know, talking about extending a TIF, I think the goal for a lot of people is to close the TIFs. And I'd love to see something go up like in Eastwood condominiums. But if the market, we just don't know what the market will come up with, and we have so few options. I mean, if someone said, wow, we want to do with the Shorewood Library what they're doing with the libraries in the city. We want to put the library on the first floor and put 2 to 3 floors of affordable housing apartments on the top, or condos. That'd be great. But, you know, people aren't coming to Shorewood. I don't know, maybe I'm missing the development piece here.
Well, again, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. There are multiple decision points we're going to have between now and, well, certainly the end of the year and beyond that. But to me, the point is currently, again, do we agree with it in concept? When we get to, if we ever get to a development opportunity, I mean, I think then we'll address those specific items then for the development to make sure we're holding them accountable and making sure the agreement is drafted in a way that protects people. I mean, I guess those are always going to be challenges that we have. But to me, the first step is, you know, again, is this a goal? And then I guess, you know, to Rebecca, let's say after TID closure, we have the money. If we get to a point where we're saying, actually, we're not going to be able to do this, can we then revert the money back to the taxing authorities that we had held in escrow? Or are we then committed to doing something definitively?
I have not heard of a situation where it's been reverted, but let me ask that question.
Okay. Because I think, I don't know if the group agrees, I feel like that would be an important thing for us to know as we're making these decisions, that if we get to the point of, you know, John and Trustee Took, you know, folks saying, well, when we get there, it could be a real challenge and we're not sure we could do it. Well, if we're locked in, I agree, that's a problem for us, that we are forced to do something. But if we say, look, you know, the idea was to use the money for affordable housing. And again, from what I'm hearing from trustees, senior affordable housing seems to be the real focus area, that's what we're talking about
No,
here.
no, not
No? Okay.
no.
So
I
just
mean,
general affordable.
you know, I mean, we're in such a new era, not just with COVID, but with the race relations issue. And, you know, people like, when you really look at it and you look at the demographics of Milwaukee and the demographics of Shorewood, we have 3% African-American residents compared to like 35%, 40% in the city of Milwaukee. I mean, the Milwaukee School Board has asked the suburban school districts to start really talking seriously about integration, and not having these incredibly disparate educational experiences for kids less than a mile away in a different race than the kids who live in Shorewood. There has been no traction at all on that discussion. And when you really start looking at issues of inequity, it comes down to residential segregation. That's what it comes down to. And we are living it right now. And I think everybody's so used to it that they don't really stop and think about how different lived experience is in some of the neighborhoods in Milwaukee compared to us in Shorewood. And I mean, really the only route out of this is furthering residential, getting rid of the residential segregation, of which we are, ground zero for. So I know some trustees think it's more politically palatable to say it's senior housing, but we're not going to be addressing the educational inequity until we address the housing inequities. And so I feel very strongly that we need to be looking at family housing, maybe refurbishing some of these units on Wilson Drive that are affordable. I don't know. I just think we need to be looking at a whole bunch of other options. So
Thank you for that.
I mean, I feel strongly that we have to be looking at not just senior housing.
Thank you. That's very helpful feedback. Thank you for that. I would agree
I want to
with
make
you.
I want to make clear. I 100% agree with what David just said, and I think that's a noble goal. And when I express my concerns, it's just my concerns is that the practicality of what ends up happening doesn't achieve that. Developers have 30% of their units that they hand out to friends of family who aren't the people that David is envisioning coming to Shorewood, because we helped demographically shift people into our neighborhoods. It really just, like, after the development is built, how do we police who gets those leases? You know, it's just a level of government involvement, I think, that is difficult to manage. And I'm not just being practical here. Like, I've seen it happen. You know, they give their cousins and nephews and everyone else those units, and then they never trade on the open market again. It's difficult to achieve that goal. That's my only concern about it.
I agree.
I'm all for working for it to try to make it happen.
Yeah. So this is John again. Peter, to answer your question directly, I'm in favor of trying this. So if we're trying to get a roll call, sort of,
Yes, that's what I was going to start
like
from.
we're all willing to at least move forward, and no one's saying no.
That's what I'm hearing. Yep.
Could we put out like an RFP or something to see what we're even kind of talking about, like to get some ideas from what a developer would even consider doing and what kind of help they would want? That would be helpful, I think.
Right. I agree.
That was kind of the at the beginning when I had talked about kind of soliciting, like focusing the funds and some, different concept or model. But the Milwaukee Trust Fund did do like a call for proposals and funded a couple developers to create new housing stock for affordable housing. The money's expended. Now they have a revolving program with more funds than we would have. But, I think something, if we could focus our efforts to get a bigger bang in like more concerted relationships to do those things versus really small projects that are spread out that tend to be more labor intensive. That's an option. I think that's definitely one to pursue.
I mean, I think if we call in Novogradac or Baker Tilly, I remember one of the reasons when we interviewed them was that they had all these ideas about this kind of thing. I mean, we're talking about ways of funding and financing and option. I mean, even if we had, like, if we took that $2 million and gave it to like a Fair Housing Coalition or some other to do projects in Shorewood. I mean, so I think we're kind of searching around for models, and we don't have models, but they're out there, and we have consultants who supposedly have the expertise to inform us about them.
Is that part of their project scope? From the housing study? Or do we have any contracts with consultants right now where it's part of their scope of their project to come up with some ideas that would work for us?
Well, it definitely was for Baker Tilly. I remember talking to them about it, but I don't know what exactly was in the contract.
We could reach out to Baker Tilly and see what they could provide.
Because I guess I can't, it's sort of like, I can support the concept, but what difference does it make if I can't see how it materializes, how it manifests, how it would play out? I need to know what's possible and how we would protect the village and the taxpayers, and how we would get the goal, as Joe mentioned. How do we get the people, who's going to, as his words, police? How do you make sure that the people get the units that we're aiming for?
You have to almost make it Section 8 housing, because otherwise, I mean, college students, W-2s all would qualify them for low-income housing. And I don't think that's what anyone has envisioning, is moving a bunch of college kids into downtown Shorewood. So,
Well, and again, I guess I'm considering this. I mean, I hear you. To me, this is, you know, we're peeling an onion here, right? This is a very, I agree, this is a very complicated item that we're considering, and we can't just go right to the core and say, what's the development going to look like? You know, that's a few months away to me, you know, getting to that discussion. I feel like there's 10 steps before we get there that we need to step through. And so starting from the top again, are we on board? And now starting to then dig into, and that's I think what staff is asking in the write-up is, okay, let's, you know, what are the priorities, or what are kind of next steps to help us understand this better?
Well,
So I agree. I think,
yeah.
I definitely think as we're looking at the next steps of the onion, we should look for things that have the minimum administrative burden. So if, for example, we say to one of the owners of one of these properties on Wilson, like, we'll give you $1,500 per unit, but you have to keep the rents below 1,000, and then, I mean, there would be, so if we figure out ways to do it simply and easily, kind of like with the facade grant program, okay? There's a 2-page application, there's no follow-up, there's no nothing. It's just, here's a grant, here you go. And I guess my feeling is, if we've been willing to do that all along now, and we weren't worried about, general capital ripping us off, then I don't see all the worry about when it comes to like helping the residents and poorer people. But anyway, that's my feeling.
So would that be like rent control?
No, a rent control program is a whole, it would be a whole village department. But I'm saying we have to find the way that's the simplest and easiest way to do it. Like, here's a check, like we did for the COVID business grants.
So can I, just to get back to Rebecca's core question. So again, Rebecca, to make sure I understand, like on page 14, you sort of have what Novogradac had put out in terms of recommended.
Correct.
And, so, and you sort of saying, from staff's perspective, and tell me if I'm stating this correctly, your preference is likely to maybe approach this as more of a single bigger project of providing affordable housing versus some sort of smaller little things that there are a lot of them and might all take a lot of administrative work. Is that a correct statement?
Yes.
Okay. And then with respect to the bullet points you have listed there, the existing housing stock programs, would those 4 bullets fall under acceptable affordable housing activities?
Yes.
Okay.
And which are those 4?
The duplex conversion program, add energy efficiency program, add senior-friendly modifications, and continue down payment assistance.
Okay. If I vote yes to extend, though, I would like to know that there's an exit strategy if we decide that we can't find a plan, a program, a developer.
Well, again, I don't want to say something that staff isn't asking, but for the CDA, would we prefer approach that is the sort of the bigger bang, if you will, the finding a new development that can provide a number of units of affordable housing, and this money is used for that? Or is the CDA more interested in maybe some of these smaller wins that we could do? Or do people have a feeling on that? Again, I don't know that we need to make a decision necessarily today, but I think that will help drive staff's continued research work on this if we have a preference one way or another. At this point, I don't personally have a preference. Conceptually, I guess I like the bigger project. I feel like that speaks to David's point more. I'm not sure about that, but that's kind of where I'm feeling right now. Any other thoughts on that?
you know, I was thinking about this yesterday, and the only thing is if we're really going to advocate for new projects, that we have to look at our zoning. And for example, it can't all be on Oakland Capitol or Wilson. You know, we have to be looking at sites on the east side of town. Like maybe we buy a lot on Lake and build something on Lake Drive as well as something on Wilson. I just think it has to be evenly. We have to be thinking about geographically distributing it.
David, why do you think that's important for a village our size?
Because I don't want it to turn into an east side, west side thing.
Okay. Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, you know, the east side is generally higher property values and higher income people, and the west side is generally, you know, less high income people. And, you know, I just feel like it should not, if we're going to build, I agree that we should be looking to build higher density, lower, more affordable housing, but I don't think it has to be concentrated in the side of town. You know, it can go up on Lake Drive just as easily as it can go up somewhere over on the west side.
Wait, so you're talking about buying houses and knocking them down and building apartment buildings on Lake Drive?
Maybe.
You think
I'm just saying, I think we have to be sensitive to that there are different neighborhoods, and that we should not cluster. If we're going to do, like, maybe we do lower rise, but all over throughout the village. That's the only thing I'm saying. It has to be equal.
So Rebecca, just to make sure we're giving staff the right direction. I don't know that we have, again, you're looking for any further clarity on the types of programs we would be interested in pursuing? Is that what you're looking for?
Yes. So Peter, you referenced the exact page, which was page 14.
Right.
Where, you know, Novogradac had some recommendations that were listed out there. So we, you know, as a group, we haven't had an opportunity to review. I mean, we reviewed them by listening to their presentation, but you as a group have not further discussed them. And so wanted to hear your input given some of the things that I've shared in terms of how you'd like to proceed.
I mean, I think any and all of them. I mean, easing the zoning rules to allow tri and fourplexes, you know, is something smaller that we can do throughout the village, including, and the other above that to allow for accessory dwelling units and co-housing options. But then so I think we should look for that, but I think we should also look for a big project too. And we should also do inclusionary zoning. I mean, if somebody comes and wants to build on Lake and Oakland, that, you know, we say 20% has to be affordable and we can help you subsidize. So, I mean, I see it as all of them.
So with the zoning, Bart, you can correct me if I'm wrong. That would actually be something that we would propose that the Plan Commission would review because of the zoning components with it, and would need to ultimately be a village board decision. With the, you know, looking for a big project and how to provide funds to help subsidize it, that's something that could be a big funding through, you know, a project or a component that the CDA would work on. Bart, am I correct with that, with the Plan Commission?
Correct. So with respect to zoning of adding, you know, 3 and 4 units within certain zoning districts, that could be a recommendation within the land use chapter of the comprehensive plan, which we're, you know, currently doing. So if the CDA has, you know, an appetite for that, that would be something that we could do there. But ultimately, that is a board level decision based on a recommendation from the Plan Commission. So they oversee the zoning chapter. So if the CDA wants to request that the Plan Commission, you know, look at that, I think the Plan Commission would be willing to do that. particularly with respect to the current comprehensive plan that's going on, they could identify areas or zones that would be acceptable to that. With respect to inclusionary zoning, the only way that we can make that happen is if we offer a subsidy. We can't require someone to do it without us participating in the deal. The state made it illegal for us to require it without our participation. So if we were to have a pool of funds and said, if you want to use these funds, you must follow these inclusionary practices, we could do that with this type of program. I just want to be clear that we can't do that without offering a subsidy. So we couldn't say, if you want to develop on this lot, you have to do this unless we're willing to participate in the funding level.
Rebecca, can I ask, again, just to get providing direction to staff, just on the bullets, I keep looking at the bullets on page 14. And I feel like the group, again, all of these are interesting things to pursue, and I'm just not sure we would be able to narrow it right now. I'm curious, as I look at those sub bullets under existing housing stock program, add energy efficiency program, I mean, could we solicit the, oh shoot, we have a committee that
Conservation.
Thank you. Could we solicit them to maybe do some research for us on energy efficiency program? And then also we have the senior friendly modifications. Could we ask the senior committee to do some research on that to provide us some further clarity on what that might look like? The duplex conversion program, I forget, is that right now paused already?
Yeah.
And the continued down payment assistance, that one is still going, or is that also paused?
Also paused.
Okay. So I guess we could get some further clarity from some of our other committees as to what that might look like. And then we would ask staff to focus on the second bullet of the new housing stock and to reach out to get back to Trustee Stokebrand's comment. Could we get some developers to do some conceptual things for us of what it might look like, and then so we'd sort of have all of those pieces that then the CDA could look at that information and start to make some further decisions.
And I think when we ask if there's Peter, I like your suggestion with the energy efficiency program and the senior modifications. I think a key component of that is what does it look like, but how is it administered? And
Okay.
I guess I have that in the back of my mind because we've had, when I came here, it was, our one grant for the business loan that we had to reconcile and go through, of which we're still going through. And so I'm just very cognizant of the position we put ourselves in by being the bank, which is not being the bank without having a lot of tools to exercise and the amount of, I guess, time that it takes to follow up on something that does fail. So I guess I'd want them to take a look at both ends.
I think we have to partner with people like Focus on Energy for that, or for what we're currently discussing with WIDA, people with expertise in this. And we do just be the bank. Say, if you can get us a project, we want to be the financial arm of it. This is your area of expertise. You do these types of developments. And then one more adjunct part, as we talk about affordable housing, I think it's an opportunity to look at if we have one particular property or something in this village that we all see as to the detriment of the village. This is the opportunity to redevelop that. And then, like, I don't have strong opinions about the Oaks, but let's just say it was the Oaks or something. Maybe we ask for or look for on a specific property that we think is just sort of deleterious to the village as a whole. Maybe there's our opportunity to get a bigger bang for our buck because we eliminate something that's not a good part of the village and transform it into something that brings affordable housing. It would also help us focus a little bit on how to accomplish this, just as a thought.
Okay. So again, Rebecca, yeah, to your point, I would agree. I mean, I think that would be some of the direction we can provide to at least the two committees is anything to come back with. I agree, the actual implementation and maintenance monitoring of it, we'd like to have factored in and whether there are any third parties out there that could help us facilitate the program.
Right now, does the CDA want to make a recommendation to end the duplex conversion program?
I do.
I'd be in favor.
That's a motion, I'll second it.
Joe, was that your-
I motion we end the duplex conversion program.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to end the duplex conversion program. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, well, that was quick. Just out of curiosity, was that an acceptable official?
That wasn't on the agenda.
Yeah,
It wasn't.
yeah.
But we could put it on an agenda if we feel like we need to.
Let's put it on the next one.
Good direction. And it's currently frozen, so it's not, if we do it now or we do it in October, it's not going to change. But it's going to be technical.
Yeah, I mean, I guess,
Speak
you know,
against it.
to be fair, there might be people that like it and would have wanted to make a comment or provide their voice to the CDA, and we didn't really let them do that. So,
And I just want to clarify one quick thing too. So we do have funds in that particular program already. So I think there's roughly $500,000 or $600,000 in that kind of revolving program. A lot of that has been coming back this year because people are refinancing those loans because of the rates out there. So we've actually closed 5, 6, or 7 of those in the past month or two. So that money is coming back quite quicker. So beyond this conversation of creating a fund for affordable housing, we already do have the neighborhood improvement program where we could, you know, look at senior friendly energy efficiency, things like that, down payment, without respect of any sort of affordable, and not that we shouldn't look at that if we wanted to, but I'm just saying we already have those funds in a pool that the CDA probably should look at how we want to reposition those things. Ending duplex sounds like it's kind of a concept. So there's kind of 2 pools that we're talking about, that those top 4 bullets, I think, could be handled within the current funding that we have. The remainder of the bullets kind of lend themselves more towards a specific affordable housing second. So, but we are getting a lot of that funding back. I closed out 2 of them last week. So maybe a different conversation perhaps next month with duplex and how to reposition that. And then lastly, the Conservation Committee actually does have a proposal. They've suggested it to me multiple times. We just haven't had a chance to fully look at it. So I might have shared it with you last year. I don't know, but I can always pull that back out. I know that they've been very interested in doing one, so they actually already have suggested something. So
yeah, they've presented information to us in the past. There were some broader concepts, and it was, you know, helping with any future development to make sure it was energy efficient. But yeah, they definitely have done a lot of good work on that. I agree. So I don't think we're asking them to start from scratch on that. There's significant stuff that's been done there.
Yeah, I think it was a lot around green building things and like
Yes, yeah.
green rooftops. I mean, it was a lot broader, really broad, but I thought really excellent
Yes.
suggestions. Because actually there's a woman on conservation who's an architect, and so she knew a lot about green and LED and stuff like that.
And so are those 2 items, the energy efficiency and the senior friendly modifications, are those for single family dwellings, or could that apply to apartments?
I would say that could apply to anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the group,
So
I'm sorry, Peter.
No, I was just trying to get closure on this, the direction to staff.
I think we have
so
some
again,
good direction to go from now that we've had an initial conversation with the group. Bart, do you?
Okay.
My only outstanding question is for Bart, which is with respect to the zoning rules. Do you want to handle that under your review of the chapters, or do you want some direction here? And I guess what I'm suggesting is that if this is something that the CDA does want to explore, do you want to hear them provide a recommendation now to the Planning Commission, or do you want to have that come out through the review of the chapters?
I personally think the review of the chapters makes the most sense because, like I said, the housing goals that we're going to talk about within that conversation will lead towards land use goals. So Vandewall, the consultant, is interested in having us provide that direction. So when they look at land use, which is their biggest, ask of this plan, they know to include ideas like that. We've discussed the concept of them, but I think having it specified would be great. So I think we can do that within the review of the chapter.
Okay, so staff has enough direction on item 5?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. All right, then speaking of the chapters, moving on to item 6, the review of the draft housing chapter for the comprehensive plan update. Bart, you want to take us through this?
Sure. So just to be cognizant of time and conversation, I just want to remind everyone. So I did present this to the Plan Commission a week or two ago at this point, and the conversation lasted perhaps an hour on each chapter. This group might not be as interactive with that. So I do have the presentation that I prepared for them that I could briefly go over that kind of leads into the questions that I have. Or if you've reviewed them and have a lot of comments that you'd like to give, I'd be willing to open it up that way as well. But I did prepare a brief overview, just kind of giving a summary of what's in the chapter. And then the primary purpose of the conversation is to confirm or to discuss the existing goals and confirm whether or not they still meet our expectations or should be revised. Based on the Plan Commission's discussion, I think they all need to be somewhat tweaked a little bit and perhaps added to. And then the biggest ask that the Plan Commission was given, and I haven't done it yet because I was waiting for this conversation, there's a list at the end of each chapter of potential concepts to explore in terms of recommendations, and there's probably a whole page of housing stuff. So how the Plan Commission left off is I was going to kind of summarize the discussion and send them a poll of priorities to look at those things and rank them in order so that I have a more concrete understanding of what is, higher on the list and lower on the list. I think we want to do it all, but we can't. I discussed potentially doing 5 or 6, maybe 7. So with that, being conscious of the time, like I said, it took 3 hours for the Plan Commission to get through this. Go through a brief presentation, or if you want to just discuss goals, objectives, and recommendations, we could go straight to that.
Yeah, I have to leave by 10, so I
do too.
Yeah, I mean, I reviewed it. Did other people?
I was at the plan.
I reviewed it as
so
well.
I'm good.
Okay. I mean, okay, on the first page,
Going, John.
1, 2, 3, 4, the 4th paragraph, the 3rd line.
What page?
First page. The quality and variety of options, key contributor quality life of its residents. That's the wrong word. DENTS, I assume. And then on page 23, this paragraph in the middle, it's all about history. And then there's a paragraph that doesn't seem to fit, that other than federal or state housing legislation, the village board. I don't know if there's supposed to be another heading there or something. And I also think if we're talking about history, we should talk about the development since 2014 and that they have been TIF funded and are primary, other than the 17 units, I think, in the White Horse, they've all been luxury housing. Other than whatchamacallit, Harbor Chase, which is also pretty damn expensive. So if we're going to talk about history, let's talk about recent history too, because that has been a major initiative of the CDA. I'll just go through my comments really quickly, if that's okay. On the next page, on page 24, the housing tenure and the discussion of owner versus renter occupied, where they say distribution is more similar, that it is comparable to Milwaukee's other inner ring suburbs. I mean, West Milwaukee is a very weird place. It's primarily industrial. It's not really a residential suburb like Tosa or Glendale or us. When I looked at that table, I saw that we are significantly, I think we are if you exclude West Milwaukee, we are the lowest owner occupied. So I look at that data, I don't say we're comparable, I say we are at the bottom. On table 2, new house, this is on page 28, new housing construction permits issued by year. I asked about the cornerstone. My other question was valuation. Do we want to also include the value of new housing construction in there? On housing goals, objectives, and recommendations on page 30, I don't, they're all around multifamily other than, well, 3 out of the 4 are all focused on multifamily, and I don't see affordability in there at all. And then the second one, strive to retain and attract residents who value education, culture, and a high quality of life. It sounds kind of elitist to me. Just like, that's just how it struck me. On page 31, minimize code and process impediments to maintenance of properties. I don't know what that means. I mean, why would there be code impediments to someone maintaining their property? That's all I had for housing.
Well, wouldn't that be like affordability? Like you can't put, wasn't there a vinyl siding you couldn't, wasn't vinyl siding? No.
Okay, yeah, that's a good example.
So Bart, back,
Oh,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, I appreciate those comments. To be clear, the current 1, 2, 3 goals and objectives, that's what's in the current plan. So like I said, I anticipate tweaking most, if not all of them. So I appreciate the criticism of, you know, some weird parts of that. So we will be redrafting those. So I have no issues with what you've just recommended.
So Bart, back to your, so are there specific questions you have? I mean, I would like to hear your presentation and maybe the specific questions you have for the CDA. Again, given our time here. I'm sorry, what's your time for releasing this report?
So the overall finalized report is intended to be done in January. So we're working on housing, transportation, and economic development in August and September. And then we're working on 4 more chapters in September and October, with the goal of having the final draft done for review in November. Then we have to have a 30-day public open period for comments, with the goal of getting it done in January. I've been saying this every time I mention that timeline. That is super ambitious. Yeah. We're trying our best, and that's why I'm presenting this to you here today. But if at any point we need to slow down to think about these things more, I'm more than willing to do so. But to keep ourselves honest with that timeline, that's why I'm presenting both of these chapters today. And like I said, the Plan Commission had a very good discussion for 3 hours, and so I got a lot of comments on there. So I don't want to shortchange this by any means, but in terms of what I'm looking for today would be on page 31. Those bullet points are kind of the concepts that I've heard throughout my 3 years here and throughout the public feedback and initial feedback. I'd be looking at sending out to the committee in some sort of survey or prioritization format so that you all have a chance to look at them in relation to each other and identify whether or not this one is more important than that one. Because like I said, we can't have all of these things in there. But after I hear back from both yourselves and the Plan Commission of what the priorities are, then I will reevaluate the current goals and objectives and draft those more in line with the concepts that I think are rising to the top. And then my expectation would be I would bring those back potentially in October or November. And I think at that point, it's a much more reviewable document. So currently right now, what's in here is just updated data and goals and objectives. And then the main part of my conversation with both Plan Commission and CDA was to lead into these current concepts. And at the Plan Commission, we discussed that we just didn't have the time or capability of doing it that well within a meeting. And so sending out a survey or a questionnaire on these was their preferred method. I think that makes sense. So if there were any concepts within this bulleted list that either make no sense to you or that are missing, that's where I'm looking at today. If you look at this and go like, I don't even want to consider that, throw that one out, or why isn't this in there? That's the main part of my conversation. So I don't think I need to give the presentation. The presentation just kind of reiterates the data that is, you know, before these bullet points. So that's where I'm at with the overall project. So housing, economic development, transportation are currently in this stage.
Well, I have a question. One of the items here is evaluate and relaunch the neighborhood improvement loan program. Are those, is that what the 4 bullets we were talking about before are? Add the duplex conversion, energy
Yes.
efficiency? Those are the 4 items. Those 4 things are the components of the neighborhood improvement loan program?
Well, not currently. It does not currently include energy efficiency or senior. It currently is only duplex conversion, attic improvement, and down payment assistance. So the reevaluation portion of that would allow us to include energy efficiency and senior friendliness and anything else that we might want to throw in there.
Okay, thank you.
So Bart, just to restate, your thought is, I mean, I agree. I think a quick getting because I agree. The challenge in doing this in a meeting is like David gave a bunch of great comments, but I'm not sure everybody agrees with what she just said about changes to the document. So getting everybody's, I would prefer to sort of get everybody's feedback consolidated and then use a meeting to go through that to come to agreement on those items. And so are you saying you're primarily looking for, again, page 31, the CDA coming back with how we our views on how we prioritize these various bullets for purposes of the report?
Yeah, so my expectation would be that I would utilize this information here to create a quick survey questionnaire where I could get more specific feedback in a compiled manner to say, okay, all 7 of you responded and all 7 of you think this one is something that we should include. Only 1 of you included this one. Bring that back so that I can summarize it for you, what I hear. Because like I said, in a meeting, we don't have that opportunity to get consensus on that level. So I'm presenting these to say, this is what I will be giving back to you. If you disagree with them, and also difficult in this short time frame, but having reviewed the chapter, I like David's comments. I can definitely compile those and summarize them.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, and if anybody else, so.
I have one more question about a bullet point, just so I'm clear. If we get these in the survey, I want to, when you go down about 2/3 of the way, you have identify needs and opportunities. The first one says to support young families, and this next one says to support supportive housing. Is that a typo, or is there something I'm missing?
No, so supportive housing, it references people with disabilities, perhaps.
Okay.
We've had a lot of questions on whether or not we can develop a program or some sort of assistance or identify a project that would allow young persons, particularly with disabilities, to remain in the village.
Right. Okay.
I mean, given that this is a plan, do we have to, can't we just sort of present a list? Do we have to prioritize? I mean, can't we just include, a variety of goals that we'd like to see? Like, how specific do we have to get, I guess is my question.
The goals and objectives can definitely be as broad as we need them to be. The problem with that is then they become kind of unactionable. And so these would be more specific recommendations underneath. So if there are specific things that the Plan Commission wants to recommend the board to adopt to, have action on, a SMART goal, something that's attainable and measurable, things like that. So yeah, the goals and objectives will be that broad high category of we want Shorewood to be a great place. And then it's like, what does this mean? We think that these things will help us get us there. So these will help us prioritize that potentially.
So we can't get by with just throwing everything in. Well, it's a plan, who cares?
I think we're being told to clean up our room.
So Bart, I hear your specific need on the bullets and prioritization from the CDA members. But then again, David had provided some additional comments. Could we ask the CDA to provide any other comments like David had within the next week?
Well, we're going to get that poll, right, Bart? The poll that the Plan Commission's going to get? Yeah,
so my expectation or plan would be to send out an email saying, if you reviewed the chapter, if you have any general thoughts on the chapter, give those to me individually. And then here's a poll that will help me build a targeted list of goals, objectives, and recommendations. With that feedback, then I would redraft a second draft, to present to you for review before I present the quote unquote final third draft to the public. So.
Okay. And then we'd have a list of items that we could, in the meeting, we could go through and consider and discuss.
Yes, yeah.
Yep, perfect. Okay. I like that plan.
So yeah, we're at the early stages of drafting this, and I'm leaning on all of your expertise to help me get in there what you guys want in there.
Absolutely.
Well, this is the part that's really tough because you have to make choices, and it's there's a lot of things that get involved about, you know, priorities and money and politics. So, but I think to make the plan really meaningful, we have to, you know, the smaller the list. I mean, it's easy to throw it all out there, but the smaller the list, as who was it, Bart said, or Rebecca, it's more actionable if it's a shorter list, and we have literally gone through the hard work of prioritizing and saying yes to some demographics and no to others, essentially.
And Bart, also on the list, and I don't want to create more work for you or mindless work, but again, to Trustee Stolfriend's comments, some of these line items, you know, I'm not sure I know what programs might be part of it. Like in concept, I would agree with it, but I don't know if it's actually doable. If you could provide any further clarity, like you did, you know, for the neighborhood improvement loan, just underneath that, say it's currently these three things. Just so as we look at it, we have as clear an understanding as possible of what that policy program would look like.
Yes.
Like I just look at that, promote equity, diversity, inclusion with the housing policy programs. Love that one, but I don't know is that just a nice thing to strive for? Are there specific things the village board and the CDA could actually do to that? So that's, again, from your expertise, any further clarity of the bullets, just so as we read them, we really understand what is included.
Yeah, I feel the same way about the historic designation, because I think that might come into conflict with affordability. I don't know, but if we have more requirements around historic things you can do to a house because it's historic, I mean, how does that, yeah, we've been talking about it for a while, but we still don't really have that much information about what the programs are and how they work and how they would impact other things. So.
Yep, I can try to provide clarity within that. So with respect to historic designation, the intention of that usually is to allow homeowners access to tax credits to maintain it as a historic property. It's less of restrictions in keeping it historic. You know, it is someone's house, and if they want to modify it a certain way, it's hard for us to, you know, inhibit that unless it's specifically, you know, nationally designated or whatnot. But if we would have more local designations, homeowners could have access to financing options to do that kind of stuff. So I can try to build that kind of detail into some of these bullet points better, so you understand where it's coming from.
Well, are there some areas of the village that, like, the entire neighborhood could be designated as historic, and then?
Yep.
And if we're actually talking about pursuing, I mean, I could see some advantages to pursuing a national historic designation, but, you know, I'm not really sure. I mean, I guess it would also kind of limit the future ownership to people who are into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes, and
okay.
I think the housing chapter probably has the most detail and questions that will be developing. I think economic development, not the transition, is a little more straightforward, and strategic planning kind of helped us get there already. But I think in terms of housing, there are a lot of concepts out there, you know, ranging from affordability to historic to everything else. So this chapter really is kind of all over the place in terms of what we could include there. So I appreciate the difficulty that we're going to have probably prioritizing some of these things, because it's going to seem like apples and oranges within the same category. But so I think this one is worthy of more detail and definition, whereas I think other chapters are a little more straightforward.
I guess if we want to make a big, bold statement, this would be the place where, like, let's say we decided to be like Minneapolis, right? And they got rid of all zoning for single family homes or single family. But I just don't see us being ready to do anything you know, that's their move, I think, toward affordability, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But given the push now with equity and everything, it's going to be, I think there's just, we have to wait and see how some of these ideas work out before I could make any kind of a commitment to something like that. I'm sorry, I'm voting for status quo.
Yeah, it's a process. So we're in the early stages of it. So I'm just throwing everything at us right now. At least everything that I've heard. Maybe there's more. And then when I come back, hopefully it's a little more targeted, and that's when those conversations can take place as to whether how bold or status quo we want to be.
So Bart, would it be helpful, I mean, if I directed all the CDA members to get you their comments by next Friday? Comments/questions on the actual chapter?
Yeah, that would be great if people have them, like David has, like, you
Yes,
know,
yes.
for details. Like, if anyone has those, yes, that would be, by next Friday would be great. My goal is to get the survey out early next week because the Plan Commission already gave me some background for it. So I'm just kind of waiting for this conversation. It sounds like we're on the same page. So I'm hoping to push that out early to mid next week with, you know, a week or two deadline on that so I can have it back by October.
Okay. So CDA, all of us, let's get Bart comments, and if we don't have comments, just email him and say no comments, just so he knows that he's gotten responses from everybody on the chapter by next Friday. We have homework. All right.
Yeah, with your permission, I'll just send an email out after this meeting because Dusty and Mike Dawson are not.
Yes, good. Yes.
So just to
A reminder, it's in your
Good
inbox
point.
then.
sorry,
Good point.
just to clarify, we're talking about comments on what is included in our packet right now.
Correct.
Yes,
The two chapters.
the two chapters. Yep.
Got
And then just to be clear in terms of the survey, so let's do any other comments on this agenda item? Art, you have direction you need from us?
Yes.
Okay. Then just on item 7, you will include that in the survey as well, the items on page, sorry, I'm just scrolling through right now, on page 47, 48, is that correct?
Correct.
As the items to,
Yeah.
yep, that's the prioritization list?
Yes.
Okay. And any other items, Bart, on that agenda item 7, the economic development, that you wanted to bring up with the CDA?
No, yeah, hopefully everyone had a chance to review it. And if you're willing to give me your
Yep.
comment on the general review by next week, I'll send the survey out and then that'll get us to a more targeted review soon.
I'll say this is a really impressive project, Bart. This is quite the work here. So
He's doing all the heavy lifting on these chapters.
yeah, no kidding. This is very impressive. So
There's 9 chapters total, keep in mind.
yeah, exactly.
You get the gold star for this one, Bart.
Yeah, this is well done.
He's really going to be glad to see we're all going to be glad to see turn the calendar to 2021, but Bart is really going to celebrate on New Year's Eve.
Oh, I'm sure we'll come up with stuff for him to do next year.
I'm sure.
COVID, a pandemic, a
Okay.
recession, civil unrest, and a new updated comprehensive plan.
It's true.
Man.
And parking.
Okay.
And
And parking, yes. All right.
Yeah, actually, parking, it brings up a good point that I'd just like to do as informational. We won't discuss it here, but that where the village board is getting closer and closer to not having an overnight parking restriction anymore. I find that I know we've had a number of meetings about it when the report was being written, but this is the kind of thing like I would normally be expecting to get a lot of letters, emails on either side. I don't know about you, Kathy, but I have not been getting a lot of response about this decision, which I think is going to be a very significant change to parts of the village. So I just want to let you guys, the 3 of you, know that this is coming, and you know, if you have thoughts or talk amongst yourselves or let your neighbors know. I mean, it's an important decision that the board's making, and I feel a little insecure because I have not been getting a lot of feedback about it.
I agree.
Well, I would say you're not getting much feedback because it's not as big of an issue as you think it is.
Maybe that's possible.
I mean,
I just
Well,
know
I think like you said-
when we changed the fee for the overnight, the 20 free that you get, and like 2 or 3 years ago, we upped it because there were reasons, and there was a recommendation from Mark to start charging for it. We thought, you know, like I've probably used that 3 times, you know, the whole time I've lived here, because I live in a single family house and I have a driveway and blah, blah, blah. It's not an issue to me. Oh my God, the hate mail that we received because people are like, why are you nickel and diming us and everything costs so much and now you're doing this? And I'm like they won't bitch about a 4% tax increase, but charging them $2 for that parking that just infuriated people and a lot of people. Yeah. So that's why I'm like, I know parking gets people upset, but I'm not hearing anything, and that's why I'm getting like
worrisome.
I think taking away parking is a problem. Giving people parking, that's why I think you're not hearing as much of an
other
issue.
side of the equation.
Yeah, you're making a lot of people's lives easier, and you're not really impacting anyone's life other than, like you said, there are maybe a couple of pockets in the village that might theoretically see some periodic challenges, but not enough that anyone can envision it.
Well, everything around UWM is going to be challenged.
But that already is, I think. So it's
well, you can't overnight park there, so they're going
to doing it. But David, I would say, just while we're on the call here, hopefully you guys do approve that. And I think along the lines of our affordability, I thought I had heard someone saying that you guys were still looking at charging like $50 or $60 a month for that. And I hope that's not the case, because that seems ridiculously high for allowing someone to park on the street, but that's just my 2 cents.
So when can I park my minivan in my front lawn and put it up on blocks? Can I do that now yet or not? Not yet.
As long as it's paved, I think it's allowed.
Oh,
no,
okay. All right.
I mean, I've done parking stuff before, and what everybody really wants is to be able to park in front of their own house. That's what they want. And when we get complaints now of people who have hardship parking permits or whatever, and they're always parking in front of my house instead of parking in front of their house, and that's what really irritates people. And it's like, we can't regulate that, you know, like there's just gonna be permits and you can park wherever, and I don't know, it makes me really nervous.
All righty, I think we are at the end of our meeting.
Yes, thank you guys.
For the next meeting date.
We are looking at October 2nd.
October 2nd. Okay. What time is that one going to be? At 9?
At 9. Do you want you know, it's funny because we had this meeting originally listed for 7:30, and I said to Bart, I'm like, I don't know that they want to meet at, because remember we were rotating 7:30 to 8 or 7:30 to 8:30. So what time do you guys want to meet?
I vote 9.
9 is good for me. Okay.
Whatever works for you guys.
Yep.
John, we couldn't hear what you said.
That was Joe. They're all bad for me, so whatever's best for you guys.
Okay.
This is John. I was saying 8 or 9 is good for me.
Well, Peter, do you actually have to get dressed up in a suit and tie and go to the office still?
I'm not wearing a tie these days.
Okay.
But yes.
But you have to get up and
So
work.
I do. 9 o'clock on the 2nd is fine with me.
Okay.
Okay,
we'll do one more question then. The action required recommended at the bottom of page 14. We did not do that today. We just sent general directions about.
That's fine.
Is that correct?
Yep.
We generally are in favor of extending the TID, but we need more information.
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
That's what we got.
Yep.
Do you need a motion to adjourn?
I do.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, everybody, very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good
Thank
weekend.
you.
Alrighty,
Bye-bye.
You too.
bye.